today's departure, but for the splashdown later tonight. So, as we said, crew ingress is currently underway. We're waiting for the rest of the crew to board Dragon for the return flight home, 11:15 a.m. Central Time, 17:15 GMT hatch closure. In about 30 minutes from now, we'll be closing Dragon's hatch. Tama and Aki suited up prior to ingressing the Dragon. Once inside the vehicle, after hatch operations, Shane and Megan will don their SpaceX spacesuits, which will be worn during all of the dynamic phases of flight. All the same leak checks on the spacecraft would occur before the crew would make their way into their seats to strap in for undocking. Concurrent with Dragon Hatch, APES hatch closure, once Dragon's hatch is closed, Mark Vandehei will affix a docking target to the outside of the APES hatch and then close it, creating a space between Dragon and the station known as the vestibule. He'll then make his way out of the pressurized mating adapter and close the Zenith around 1:05 p.m. Central Time, 19:05 GMT. An undocking command will then be sent, followed by a few minutes for the umbilicals that connects power and data between the two spacecrafts to detach for 12 hooks holding Dragon in place to retract, and then two quick firings of Dragon's thrusters will initiate separation, and undocking will be complete. After undocking and before embarking on the journey home, we are looking for the crew to do what's called a fly around maneuver. Crew Dragon will make a full loop around the station for about an hour and a half for the crew to photograph the laboratory's exterior. This is a general survey around the station to see areas that can't be regularly seen by external cameras and the robotic arm. NASA astronaut Mark Vandehei will be watching the undocking and the departure from the cupola, but the prime departure monitoring falls on Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur. Mission controls in Houston and in Hawthorne will back them up. And as you've heard already several times this morning, their Dragon flight is intended to be autonomous, but the crew on board has the ability to take control and maneuver Dragon during departure if necessary. On the station side, we're still looking good. Solar arrays are locked in place. We have good communication links, and the attitude will remain on U.S. thrusters control until the time of undocking, when we'll switch to use control moment gyros only. We're tracking no issues for an
and we'll have a lot of time while the vestibule in between the Dragon and the space station is pressurizing. Right now they are equalized in pressure and the hatches are open. We're just minutes away, about 15 minutes away from closing that Dragon hatch. From there we'll wrap up our coverage and take a short break while we wait for the vestibule to pressurize in between the station and the Dragon will come back up to do undocking. But I was mentioning the crew handover. There is 3 crew members that are going to remain on board. Mark Vandehei is the NASA astronaut. We have Station Commander Anton Shkaplerov and Pyotr Dubrov, both from Roscosmos, that will remain on board. This is coming from the delay of the Crew 3 launch, which is scheduled just a couple of days from now, no earlier than November 10th. So right now we're in an indirect handover, and this is it's completely fine. It's just all you're missing out on is the opportunity for the crew to just show the new crew, the arriving crew, Crew 3, around the International Space Station, get familiarization on where things are, including the emergency equipment. But we have Mark Vandehei on board, who is able to do that.
Yeah, and of course weather, especially around Florida, super tricky. So unfortunately, while it would be preferable to do a direct handover, really got to do what's best for both crews. And in this case, that involves returning the crew back home prior to Crew 3 lifting off. So like we mentioned before, weather has been in constant consideration over the last couple of days with constantly changing variables around the coast of Florida, both on the Gulf Coast as well as the Atlantic, watching things like wind speeds as well as wave height. So we're really excited that as of right now, we are going to be bringing everybody home from Crew 2 today. So super exciting.
That's right. And it's going to be an exciting journey. We have, of course, the undocking They will back up. Here's a fantastic graphic. Back up to about the keep out sphere, which is about 180 to 220. It's going to keep within that 40 or so meter range, and it'll essentially fly around the International Space Station, going to the from the zenith or the top facing to the aft or the back, and then just make one complete loop from 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock around the International Space Station. The whole time, the Dragon's nose cone will be open, and they have a window at the very front. Well, the crew will be taking pictures right out the window. They'll make a full loop. That'll take about an hour and a half before they do 2 departure burns that will send them outside the keep out sphere and the approach ellipsoid and begin the journey home. It'll only be a couple of hours there, and we'll provide continuous coverage as they do those departure burns. There's also a departure phase burn that allows them to shift the phasing from essentially co-elliptic with the International Space Station, or pretty much right underneath, to the phasing that allows them to line up with the primary landing zone, and that is, of course, Pensacola, Florida for today. The deorbit burn is going to be a hefty one, a 16.5-minute burn. They'll fire those. Once they do that, they are committed to land in Pensacola, Florida.
Yeah, so super exciting day.
Undocking. We'll be back to provide some coverage right before they do the final go, no-go for undocking, and then the undocking sequence starts at about 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific. It takes about 5 minutes once that sequence starts to undo the hooks, and then there's a couple burns that'll happen to actually physically separate.
For awareness, we are going to clear the inactive onboard alert from the display alpha power cycle.
Okay, thank you.
All right, they're continuing to work that display, making sure it's ready to undock 2 hours from now. Again, that physical separation is 11:05 a.m. Pacific. Looks like Mark Vande Hei is taking some photos. There is that window, the same window that the crew will use to take photos of the International Space Station during the fly around, sending some final photos and final goodbyes to the crew there.
It is a pretty small window that they have to look out, as we saw earlier while the crew was ingressing. So